Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstat.
The war in Afghanistan began in the wake of the 9/11 attacks and ended in August 2021 with the chaotic exit of American troops. Now Frontline explores why America went into the country and the human cost of the 20 years of conflict. Joining us to talk about the three-part series, America and the Taliban, is Martin Smith, producer and correspondent for Frontline. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin.
Thank you for having me.
And let's talk about this. You actually spent 18 months in Afghanistan. You spoke with numerous Taliban officials. In watching this part, the first part of this, how did you gain their trust?
Oh, I don't know if they trusted us. They were willing to sit down because they were victorious and they were very high on that victory. And so initially after the fall of Kabul, they wanted to keep talking and have it was a field day for them. They got a little more closed as time went on.
Now, because some of them, they had never spoken before, and they actually, again, seeing some of the images in this documentary, it did feel like you did gain some of their, I even want to say, respect to be allowed into the country and to be able to interview them. That is really such an important part of this documentary.
It is, because for years I covered the war from the side of the U.S. and NATO forces, but I couldn't cross the battle lines and talk to the Taliban. Now the war is over, and I was able to go in and talk to the Taliban. And so, it was important to see the war from both sides.
And let's talk about seeing the war from both sides. You interviewed the Taliban leaders. You also interviewed our U.S. leaders as well as our troops who were there during the war.
That's right. It was important to hear from all of these players. I think especially from the troops on the ground, it was important. These are the people that put their lives at risk. Many of them lost their lives. 2,500 of them lost their lives.
And Martin, you've been covering this for Afghanistan and the Middle East for Frontline for 2 decades. It's a subject you know very well. And part of the documentary and reading about this, you wrote and said, our new series traces the mistakes, miscalculations, and hubris that allowed this to happen. Let's talk about that.
Well, we went in with a great deal of American idealism that somehow we carried into Afghanistan the belief that they want to be like us. They want to have a country like ours. And this was the hubris of our approach. And it was sadly mistaken.
And let's also talk about some of these images again. Sometimes we're over here, we tend to, maybe put that in the back burner, forget about what has happened over there. But to see some of these heartbreaking images, one of them was a woman holding her child in the middle of the street, the children malnourished. When you were there, what do you want us to take away from this 3-part series when we watch this?
I hope that people can get a sober understanding of just what we tried to do and what the odds were that it would succeed. I think that we have this sort of optimism that is misplaced, that we can go halfway around the planet into a culture that we don't understand very well and successfully manipulate it into something that resembles a Western state.
And let's talk about, again, this is airing right here at Vegas PBS, 3-part series. I do want to talk about your production team because, again, to see these images, you went in there again. It's still a very dangerous place. Let's talk about your production also partner, Marcela Gaviria, as well as the rest of your production company and your crew. Very impressed by what you did.
Thank you very much. Well, we go very small on the ground. So it was myself, fellow producer Marcela Gaviria, who also happens to be my wife, and with a longtime cameraman who's covered Afghanistan himself for even more than 20 years. He was there during the first Taliban rule in the 90s, Scott Anger. So we went in, the 3 of us on the road. We hired local producers, local fixers, as we call them, who we depended on for their contacts and their language skills, and drivers. Our presence on the ground is small.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, our presence on the ground is small. And it's workable that way. Otherwise, you go in with many vehicles and many crew. It doesn't, you don't really get to see too much.
And all of you did a wonderful job. We thank you so much. And again, it will be airing right here on Vegas PBS. Thanks for joining us, and thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you very much.
And you can watch the first part of the series, Frontline America and the Taliban, tonight at 10 p.m. right here on Vegas PBS. It will also be available on the PBS app.